a brand new dawning as the passion start to rise. The energy fill the skies. I say thanks for favor.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are now switching gears to politics here in Tobago. So, of course, on December 6th, it marked 2 years of the current administration led by Chief Secretary Fali Augustine. And it's been quite an eventful 2 years. And to add to the perspective on what the last 2 years brought us and to, just give a little bit of analytics towards it, we are being joined by former Assemblyman, Mr. Max James. So a special good morning and welcome to you.
Thank you, Kandace, as always, and thanks for having me.
Certainly. Now, so I'm going to get your brief view right off the bat. Actually, no, let's start with how would you rate the last 2 years?
On the last occasion you asked me that question, I think I did give them maybe, I think it was an 8.5 or 9, thereabout. I don't know if I could defend that at this stage. I'll give a short answer.
So what's the answer?
Well, I can't defend my last position. I think my last position has certainly, since you pulling me out, it's gone below that score. And perhaps we'll get into those reasons.
Okay, so I mean, where's the score right now?
I think it's about 6.
About 6.
5.5, 6.
5.5, 6. Yeah. All right. So let's see why within a year it dropped from just about 8.5 to 5.5, 6. That's 3 points, basically.
I think to be honest, I think recent actions and policy measures, or the inability or the experience to put the proper policies in place to build on what you had. I mean to say, you came into power on a significant high, virtual gods, so to speak. And I think for reasons best known to the executive, I think that, to be honest, that they've lost a lot of political capital. You know, in tennis there's something called an unforced error. And it saddens me because of all the work I have done over my years in politics and in trade union activity, I mean in social pressure groups, and having worked very hard to have participated in the last events 2 years ago, to see that being whittled away, it really saddens me. And it saddens me particularly where you have a group of young people who believe that it is their view alone that counts. And when you reach that stage, when you're unwilling to take critical advice, now you don't have to take every piece of advice, certainly you can't. But one of your significant statements was that, the impression that you pushed in the public, that's now it's young people time, and let some of them go home with their arthritis knee and mine grandchildren, is an unfortunate statement. And if you look at the developed world, and this has nothing to do with young people, because my children are young and I'm coming too, and they will have their time and they will have their space, but you'd hope that the young people that are there, that are governing us, would take a little more advice and take a little bit of pause. Because I want to make the point that in the developed countries and the very progressive countries, they're all ruled by elderly people, for the most part. You could say what you want about Biden. You could say what you want about President Xi in China. You could say what you want about Putin and some of the more significant countries in the world. They are ruled by people who have experience, significant experience, and where they may not be necessarily old as we call old people, they have a maturity in age. And it cannot be that you are not accessing the vast resources that that can be found in the people who are older than you. All right, and I think that I'm not the only one saying that. But you can't have a party that is running your affairs, and the moment that you say something that some of them don't want to hear, they castigate you. A party could only grow when it can criticize itself, it can critique itself, it can do some self-introspection and say something might be going wrong. Why are these persons who are older than we are, they're not saying, listen, and they're not listening.
And
so
then,
I think that
and then like, you know, just to button a little bit, I'm getting from you that like the policies and so on, some of the decisions that were made were unfavorable, and I'm assuming here that one of the major ones has to deal with T.H.A.
Certainly, I've tried painstakingly not to refer to that organization and even the secretary that leads the organization, but I'll try to be patently fair. It was a secretary who I felt had a lot of promise, and I think she still has some promise, only if she would listen. And when you sit around the table and you console each other and you wrap yourselves around each other, it's almost like it's almost incestuous, because you're not taking the views of others. If you look at the level of the advisors around some of the secretaries, they're little children. Sorry, advisors, but for the most part, persons who have no experience. If you want to start at the level of the chief secretary, I'm not seeing a cadre of persons who have surrounded him, or he has surrounded himself with, to give him experienced ideas and the wisdom and almost throughput. That is what you're having, and it's unfortunate that at that level he could have set the tone much better. And this is not to make him feel badly. I don't know who advised him, and it's difficult to advise yourself, and therefore I hope that he can see the error of his ways and do better. Come in January, remove those people who are around you and bring in people who have the experience. It could be anybody, whoever you choose. All right. And then the things that you should do for the people, while the big projects are important, and I love them, there are some projects, there are some bread and butter issues that resonate with people. And I think going forward, that is what they should focus on.
And what are some of those bread and butter issues that they are ignoring at this point in time?
There's some, you see, it depends on the focus. Now, let's say, well, maybe I shouldn't have said bread and butter, some smaller things, okay, right, rather than bread and butter. But let me just turn around to speak more about T.H.A. I hadn't developed on that particular part of the conversation. So you have, and you know I'm very blunt, you have a chairman of the board who lies incessantly, and you send home 60 to 70 persons. When I do the math, because they'll all win their cases, you're talking about close to $40 million that the assembly will have to pay out when these cases are won, not even counting those who were sent home previously in other areas of the assembly. Right? You see, the courts look at the overriding public interest when you're going to take a particular action. And then when you have the deputy chief secretary saying, well, another organization is doing this and another organization is doing that, I mean, it's unfortunate, because discharge of a worker is one of the last options that an employer has. The courts have pronounced on it over and over. Even the Tobago House Assembly lost a case against Banking and Industrial Workers Union. So there's precedent even here. And when you have an assembly or an executive not willing to follow the rule of law, then that bothers me, because I was a worker before I became a secretary or an assemblyman. I was a worker before I reached where I am today. And I'm very passionate about how workers are treated. And they are your most important resource. They're the people who pay you, who do your work for you, who carry out your public policy. And therefore, if you come to power on the premise that a worker should not have to fight for something that he or she is entitled to, and you turn your back on that, and then you promise, and I like to use this word, he promised solemnly that the workers at T.H.A would not be sent home. In fact, his words were like this: all they worrying all themselves about, none all ain't getting sent home. 3 times in the meeting, he's on the record. And if the chief secretary himself cannot set the tone, then what does he leave his other secretaries to do? All right? And it grieved me as a former trade unionist, as a former worker, that workers today, once you do that, you actually tread on my corns. And if you're not going to take the advice and you will bring a smart lawyer to ask a question that everybody will ask, and the matter has to go and be delayed for 2 years, you're putting bread out of those families' mouths for 2 years down the road, and you're laughing at that. And what is the reason? And I want to reiterate ad nauseum for the public and for other workers. If people are not going to treat you badly, then you have a finger. There's always a finger, you know. And if you're not hearing, there's always a finger. And I have to say that as a warning, not as a threat, but as a warning. You want people who will protect your interests. So they have interests, but what is the interest? The interest must be towards your workers. Any one of us who did industrial psychology or human resource management or performance management, those studies have done has shown that where you, particularly there was a seminal study called the Hawthorne Studies in a book by J.C. Brown, Psychology of the Industry. When workers see that you are paying attention to their rights, and you're paying attention to their needs, they'll be even willing to work in adverse conditions. So the studies, time and again, multitudinous studies have shown where once you are true to your workers, you ensure that their rights are protected and promoted. Because I tell you, it was in the days of Eric Williams, when we moved from the ISA to the IRA, the government saw it fit that workers are being disadvantaged. And they put in place systems to ensure that the rights of workers are protected and taken care of. You having the reverse here and justifying it on spurious grounds. And that hurts me as a former trade unionist. In fact, I'll put it out now. I will be bringing my own trade union in January. I already have the certificate. Because this cannot continue. Workers must be treated correctly and rightly.
And what are some of the other policies and decisions that were made over the last 2 years that did not sit well with you? And you think that is hurting the current administration's reputation at this point in time?
The people out there are getting the impression that in many ways the administration has been true to them. One of them we know. I won't go into them this morning. I prefer not to. And there are some things that you want to keep quiet about because you're not getting anyway. And you know it's heartbreaking because I come from the time of Ian Robinson. I come from the time of H.A. Charles and Stanley Beard and Cecil Carruth, all of us. But you see, arrogance was what caused H.A. Charles to lose. It affected all of us. I won't go into anything specific, but he was arrogant. And you see in many secretaries here a frightening degree of arrogance. I'll give you one example. Let me make these statements rather. You don't govern by recrimination. There's this narrative that the P&M did it, so their actions are justified. That's not how you govern, and they don't want to hear that at all. The P&M did it, so we should do it too. But you came you came through and on a platform that we'll do differently. And you can't take actions because the PNM did it and you're upset. You don't govern with hate. You sit back and say, well, they did it this way, we will now try to do it in a particular way. I voted against Ansel Dennis when he was Chief Secretary. But he fixed my roads for me, going to my property, only doing agriculture. And he could have said no. I voted against Orville. I criticized him. And he still turned around and gave me certain appointments. And I was perhaps his worst critic. Ansel Dennis was, I put him in a political place and space that even when he had to do things for me as an individual, he could have said no. And he said, no, Mr. James, I will fix these things for you. You dare not oppose his secretary. In fact, I will say this part, because I'm putting her on notice. The Deputy Chief Secretary said, Max James, I'm going to block you, so that I don't have to speak to you again. As we just say, that's the God in heaven and truth. I said, well, that's your right. Because you take a different view. You cannot and must not govern like that. You must entertain a different view when you are in government.
Certainly.
You must be able to be criticized, and you go back and say, well, why is this person? Because I don't think, I'm not patting myself on the shoulder. I'm not an insignificant person in the society. I'm not an insignificant person. And therefore, if somebody is telling you that you're going the wrong way, you sit back and you take pause. And you come again and say, Mr. James, why are you criticizing me? Where did I go wrong? And you get your followers to lambaste me and to lambaste a view that is in fact, and I will assert myself, that is much more superior to yours. And I think that the way how we are governed, people need to sit back. I think the Chief Secretary needs to come out and say, I'm sorry to the TATCO workers. I think he needs to come out because he promised. Don't promise, because people believe that he promises, and a number of them also. And when you make that promise, workers are going to believe. And then 6 weeks later, you send them all of them, and say apply by faith, which is contrary to what the law says. And they
I'm
believe
going to stick a
themselves.
pin right there because we got to go for a break. But don't worry, we're not quite done yet with Mr. James. So we'll be back as we discuss the last 2 years of the current T.H.A. administration.
Tobago updates.
And welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates this morning, viewers. We are continuing our conversations with Mr. Max James, former assemblyman in the T.H.A., as we discuss the current administration of the T.H.A. over the past 2 years. Now, before we went to the break, Mr. James was just highlighting a few of the issues that he had a concern with this current administration. Last year when we were at the 1 year mark, he rated the T.H.A. at just about 8.5. I know he said that it's about 6.5.
5, no, about 5.
About 5. So
5.5,
they've
6.
dropped about 3 points within his rating.
Perhaps 4.
Yes, and part of that has to do with the policies and the decisions that were taken, especially over the past year. Major one, in Mr. James's view, is that of TATCO.
And the treatment of workers
generally.
I am saying I've always struggled for workers. In fact, I was the secretary that put in place, I wrote about 90% of it from this hand. The minimum terms and conditions for workers on contract in the Tobago House of Assembly. And when I see contract work, because contract workers didn't have the protection in terms of what you call the public service regulations and all of that. So I felt that we had a significant body of workers that need those protections. And it was the right thing to do, coming from where I came from as a trade unionist and a former worker at WASA. And I reasoned with the Executive Council at the time, and the Chief Secretary was happy for that body of work, where workers, if people are working for you, must protect their rights. You have rights under the constitutions, and if you're working side by side with public officers who have rights, therefore they need to be protected too. Because there's something that is called in industrial relations the test of an employee, and there are different tests, like the control test, the organization test, multiple tests, and so forth. and I'm saying that to the public office, you will see that those contract workers are in the chain of command, and they are really on contract of service, even though the written contract says just the written word, their contract for service. But when you apply the test, you will see that their contract of service just as any public officer. And therefore, those bodies of workers, that body of workers needed to be protected. I will not stand by or idle or mute when I see contract workers being taken advantage of. It is just pure wrong. I will defend it. And I'm telling every secretary that, including the chief secretary, I will defend it. Max James, gave those workers their protections, and you must not take it away. Because if the central government were to take away the freedoms and rights and the autonomy that we have, then you wouldn't like it. Many of them never held a flag. For many of the secretaries today, never held a flag in defense of any workers' rights. One or two of them did, and I applaud them. I won't repeat their names, but when I saw that they did that, I said, wow, good woman, and give you an indication. And that was good. You can't turn around forgetting that you're a worker and you are involving yourself in policies and decisions that affect workers. I wouldn't stand for it. And it's just plain egregious. Let me use that word for the other. It's just plain wrong. Let me use a simpler word. It's just plain not good. And I will tell the workers, you will see that I will be defending you coming next year. And if the administration wants to prefer to go to court and to have whatever good they might be doing, no, that is now sidelined because you have a lot of court matters to deal with. Yeah. As a matter of fact, and I want to say this because there are some people who do not know. In that document, I did put, I think it was taken out, not by these people, but it was taken out. And I opposed it. I went and fasted in James Park for 3 days. And the chief secretary at the time, they had to withdraw. There was a particular clause that says that, in fact, I removed myself and the entire executive council from hiring anybody up to range 46. That's about an administrator, right? So that I don't have to be hiring anybody. The process must be transparent. I don't want to even hire somebody close to me, my own family, my relatives and them. No, I don't want to do that. The only people that I would hire, the executive council members who are authorized to hire, were people above range 46, AO2, who is involved in your policy making. You want to ensure that your policy will be made properly and protected and so forth. So those people who are involved in your policy development, you want to hire those. Everybody else below the level of an AO2, you have an organizational chart, and you expect the administrator to hire persons based on the organizational chart that has been developed for us to function. Why you want to go and hire? But your personal secretaries, your advisors, and persons in your policy making, or your very special units, I'm excluding those. You can hire those. But the run-of-the-mill persons on every day, you have no business there. Let the administrators do their work, and you monitor them to ensure that the workers' rights and interests are protected. That is what true governance should be. The other thing is, I listened ardently to the minority leader the other day on a news conference. And when I saw his complaints, I shuddered. We could not run or duck, as we say colloquially, from answering a question in the House. Potroy would not stand for that. There's no excuse. Somebody said a particular woman secretary faint. I don't know if it's true. But then she's not there to answer the question, but comes in later to take part in a debate. And there are several secretaries who are ducking the question. That is undemocratic. It is not a laughing or joking matter. Be there turn up for the questions, give the public answer, because we are founded on democracy. It is a system where we send representatives, because all of us can't go to we are strangers to the house, and we send them there to answer questions that we ordinarily can't ask. And you expect the answers to be truthful. So I'm saying to my friends in the Executive Council, please, and the Assistant Secretaries, please turn up for your questions. And please answer the questions on time. I remember the Deputy Chief Secretary, I fell out with her some years ago, because she was concerned. We are here in December I've been put here to work, and I come here for work. And now they don't want to come, they want to have meeting and greeting and Christmas dinner. And she was livid. Why they not here? I don't want to participate in this. And today, these are the same people who are saying, we're not coming to answer the questions. And so forth. When she was against it.
Now, is it that we have not seen really a change in the style of governance compared to, we're compared to the PNM. So we had the PNM for 21 years, and there were concerns that were expressed in the public space, and we saw how the way that people in Tobago voted because they wanted something different. Are you now saying that there hasn't really been a change in the way that the governance operates for the people? Especially where transparency and accountability and so on is concerned.
Well, let me tell you something. You come into power because people perceived you to be as wanting or a promise that I will do differently. I'm repeating, you must not and cannot govern with recrimination. And if that's how you're going to do it, people will see through you. It's easy. It's an oxymoron, as we say. You have to be empathetic. You also have to be sympathetic. And unfortunately, Kandace, I'm not seeing that. And you're losing rapidly the goodwill that people give to you. I know I'll be castigated for making these remarks, but people who know me, they know I'm very fearless. I don't care one hoot what you want to write or think. So they could bash me on the chat, and they'll say what they want. But I want all of them who are going to do that. Dress back, as we say. Go into your closet. When you kneel down and pray, when you commune with your God and your own conscience, you must know that members of the Executive Council are doing wrong things in terms of the governance. They have to change course because you worked hard to remove the PNM, and now you're giving it away in 4 years or less than 4 years, and they're not listening. There are different approaches in terms of getting things done, and I'm thinking arrogance and hard ears, as we say, will get them out of office. And then all the work that we had, long before some of them were born, I was in the battlefield. Some of them even don't know me. They might know me through these programs. But you're throwing it away. They are throwing it away. For no good reason you're throwing it away. And I'm appealing to them. They need to change course. They need to change course.
Now, is there, as we're getting ready to wrap up, because we've just got a couple minutes left, is there any positive mentions you can make about the performance?
No, there are tremendous positives. Of course, I cannot, in all good conscience, say that there are loads of them, right? But I think they've reached a point now where they are throwing all of that away, right? Of course. And I want to reiterate to the public, yes, they are.
And what are some of them?
You have, let me start with my favorite secretary, the cataract program. There are some programs in health that she did really do well. I am going to say that. My brother, who was being pilloried, I think if he had the money and more support, I think that Tobago would have been tremendously transformed as we speak. You might not have recognized Tobago, because that's who we are. We are pioneers. We are we changed the game. That's who we are. And I think if he was allowed, then I think that Tobago to be much different. All right. We are seeing some things emerging in education too. Good, right? So apart from that, works and infrastructure, health. So I would admit that she has done those programs are good. So I'm going to say it as it is, right? There's some developments in education. The others are works in progress. And I think if they change course, then you will see. I think the argumentation in terms of the deal with the Prime Minister, we could be a little bit more diplomatic. Mm-hmm. I won't be too cross with the Chief Secretary, although because I was once like that. And today I understand, that we could temper the language are different and still achieve the same things, mm-hmm. right? But I just want to close by saying this, because it touches, and people say, hey, James, you're tired with that talk, but where it touches a bread and butter issue. So they came and said, and they allowed the chairman of the board, we are not going to buy the foreign chicken. It's unhealthy. And all those lies. People eat the Tyson chicken every day of their lives. You put in place your own thing. But you don't throw out the whole thing and then all of them fall. Because had they continued, I want to say this to the Chief Secretary, had you instructed your Secretary of Agriculture to ensure that we have the foreign chicken, which is much cheaper, mm-hmm. whilst you are still struggling to get your local chicken. But you can't sell the local chicken for $15 and $17 a pound. The foreign chicken is like $6.33 a pound. And then you take away that, and then you foist upon us a wrong, a kind of financial strain. So the decision was so bad that I'm saying, let the two of them go. When you are satisfied and you see the other one is working, mm-hmm. then, but you can't sell it for 3 times the cost. How are people going to survive?
And we had to leave it right there because we are out of time. But I want to thank you so much, Mr. James, for coming here and giving us your perspective. And we're looking forward to see how the next year and what happens and your analytics as we keep going along.
Thank you.
All right, viewers, so that's it for this morning. Thank you for joining us and have a safe and wonderful day. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.
Tobago Updates.